Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're at, and welcome to another edition of Dodgers Dawgs Live as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening. I'm super excited to be able to be back here doing another one of these shows Monday nights. Been a little bit on and off for me. I haven't done one in the past couple of weeks on Monday nights due to a lot of traveling, going to a lot of different games, which, by the way, right now you can see sporting the brand new Great Lakes Loons road jersey. You can go ahead and get yours now, loons.milbstore.com. Definitely worth it, and they look great on the field, so you should definitely check that out. Been doing a lot of traveling so far, have been to 7 of the first 15 Loons games of this season, have had the privilege of being able to do that. So I've had a little bit of time to be able to step back a little bit and observe some things from the system. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit as well. I also wanted to intentionally, in part because I needed to make sure that I gave myself a little bit of rest, but also a little bit unintentionally, meaning I don't like to miss a lot of these shows. But I wanted to also give myself and the team a little bit of time to be able to establish who they are in order to start to make and start to have some of these conversations about the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2025. There is a lot of analysis that can be done from game to game, and certainly you can talk about decisions that were made, individual at-bats or plate appearances, who's on a little bit of a hot or a cold streak. But what I like to do and what I like to observe is a lot of those trends that you can see. And trends take a long time to be able to establish themselves. And when you have a very narrow picture of a season, when you have a very narrow picture of where things are and what they're going to look like, you can't always see what exactly is there. So now that we've had close to a month of the season, not quite there yet, but at least a decent enough chunk of the season, we can start looking at potentially what are some of the, and I wouldn't even necessarily call it trends right now, what are some of the observations that we have for the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2025. What are some of the areas that are encouraging, and I'm sure this is where a lot of this discussion is going to be, which chime in the chat if you are joining us here tonight. Some discouraging signs as well, and where could we see potential fixes for the Dodgers, or could these issues just naturally fix themselves? I think these are important discussions, important conversations to have, but as I will state, and this is something that I will repeat over and over, and I apologize for repeating myself over and over, these are early season trends that we are potentially seeing. It is incredibly early in this season. So, and if you're talking about the Dodgers, if you're talking about major league front offices, they usually like to give themselves, especially with players of track record, as much time to be able to see if they can figure things out before turning the page. And so patience is a virtue that is given out by major league front offices, whether you think that is of benefit to the organization, or do you think that is hindering them or perhaps causing them to continue to go into ways that is not the way that they should continue to go down the road. So I'm sure we'll be getting into a lot of those discussions. I'm excited to be joining you guys tonight. Another programming note, I know Casey did a show with Coach Holt earlier this morning that will go into more deep dive into the game that we saw on Sunday, Dodgers versus Rangers. I won't be recapping that game. I highly encourage you, go check out the episode posted this morning if you're on the West Coast, this afternoon if you are on the East Coast, right about lunchtime, I think is when it popped through for me. Go check out that. That has got a great analysis in it from Casey, Coach Holt. It also does a deep dive into some of the down the farm that you got to see over the course of the weekend. Highly encourage you to go check that out if you want to hear some of their thoughts. Just me here tonight, and what we're going to do is we're going to look just overview of where this roster is at, and particularly because I know this is a lot of this discussion, this is a lot of the hot topics because of what we saw during the Texas Rangers series. There is one aspect of the game that seem to be lacking a little bit for the Dodgers. We will do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the very early season numbers for these Dodgers hitters. Where is there concerning signs that we are seeing, and what do we expect going forward, as well as timetable. Is there any imminent moves that could be coming for the Los Angeles Dodgers with that? I don't have any inside information, but I have been watching this organization to see how they've acted, and I also know where each of these players are at in the stage of their career and where potential moves could be. Because if there is any moves, it is going to be incredibly difficult moves that the Dodgers would have to make. So let's go ahead and start off with the Dodgers offense. Let's look to see just where the state of the roster is right now as we are. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my screen in just a second. I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can. Just a fair warning, I am using Fangraphs with this. I do not have the premium version of Fangraphs, which I would recommend that you get. I don't have it at this point because I got to pay for all these Loons games that I'm going to. But that comes with an ad-free version. Mine doesn't, so there will be a lot of ads. I try to zoom in as much as I can to get some of these things so you can look to see where things are at right now. But let's go ahead and just take a look at where the roster is currently set, just to get an overview of where things are at. So this is the current state of the roster. It has the normal everyday lineup that we have. You can see 1 through 9 right here. Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teo, Edman, Conforto, Will Smith, Max Muncy, and Andy Pages. You can move those guys around in the order. That's not a set order that they are set. As well as their bench, Austin Barnes, Miguel Rojas, Kike, and CT3. Of note, and this is something to keep in mind that has happened over the past couple of days, Eddie Rosario was actually added to the 40-man roster and then added to the Dodgers. He played Friday and Saturday for the Dodgers while Shohei Ohtani was on the paternity list, which congratulations to Shohei Ohtani and his family. That he was designated for assignment after the game Saturday or Sunday. I think it was Sunday yesterday that he was designated for assignment. The reason why he was designated for assignment as opposed to some of the other players, Eddie Rosario defensively is a corner outfielder. And when you talk about a lot of these other guys that are on the list, they don't really have a need for a backup corner outfielder when you have a Michael Conforto and a Teoscar Hernandez being everyday type of players. And when you're talking about other players that are part of this bench, Austin Barnes, you need a backup catcher. Miguel Rojas is somebody who plays the infield. Eddie Rosario wouldn't fill in that role. Kike Hernandez and Chris Taylor are utility players. Kike Hernandez obviously is important because of the postseason. That is something that even me, from a statistical point of view, it's very hard to dispute based on what we've seen repeatedly. And then Chris Taylor, we've talked about quite a bit, him being really close to the 10 years of service time. He also is somebody, and we'll dive into this in a little bit, just is not receiving a whole lot of plate appearances. He will come in for late inning defensive substitution. He played a game in center field the other day. Those are things that you wouldn't really task Eddie Rosario for those late inning roles. You would have Eddie Rosario on your team to maybe be a pinch hitter, but there's not really a guy that you would necessarily replace him at this point. And then the other guy that would be of conversation would be Andy Pages, which we've already discussed. Eddie Rosario, not a center fielder, which is why they decided to move in that direction. The reason why they designated for him for assignment is he did not have any minor league options. Came up, had some good hard contact during his 2 games that he had, but that was strictly to fill in the hole of Shohei Ohtani. So just want to make sure that if you were unaware, that is what happened to Eddie Rosario at this point. Continuing on with the rotation right now, because of injuries that have taken place, which Blake Snell currently on the injured list, and just recently, since Evan Phillips is back, Blake Trinan was placed on the injured list. It sounds like it's not as bad as they were anticipating. You can take that for whatever it's worth based off of what you believe the track record of them describing or their injuries and how long it will actually take for Blake Trinan. But they still have a lot of really good arms. And we've seen the emergence of arms, Ben Kasparius, Jack Dreyer, to name a few of guys that have stepped up. We've seen Kirby Yates strike out almost 50% of hitters. Did give up the game-winning home run on Saturday. That will happen through the course of the season. I don't think that is any indication of what type of pitcher Kirby Yates is. You still have Tanner Scott, Alex Vesia, Evan Phillips, Anthony Bonda. You do have Luis Garcia and Noah Davis as part of this part of the pitching staff right now. Noah Davis was just recently added, and he's another one of those arms that can just fill in. Sounds like the game plan for this upcoming week against Chicago is going to be Dustin May starting on Tuesday, bullpen game on Wednesday. That will be who they use on Wednesday and will depend on what they actually do on Tuesday and how much length they're going to get out of Dustin May and if that game goes sideways. If that game goes sideways, might be seeing a lot of Luis Garcia and Noah Davis during the game on Tuesday. Otherwise, they might use a couple of their high leverage arms, which is at this point just a large part of their bullpen, which is incredibly encouraging to see thus far. What I wanted to do, though, however, is look at the Dodgers offense right now from a statistical point of view, because if you look at just the overall statistics, and we'll go ahead and pull this up right here. If you look at overall statistics right now, and this is team stats for this year, this right now is currently sorted by WAR. We'll go into a lot of the other numbers as well, and we'll go ahead and talk through and explain them along the way. By WAR, the Dodgers rank middle of the pack, 14th at 2.7. That is taking into account their offensive component, that's taking into account defensive component, as well as some of their base running metrics, which defensively and base running, the Dodgers right now are a below average team. You look at stolen bases, they rank near the bottom. They rank 25th in stolen bases. By Fangraphs' defensive metric, they rank about middle of the pack, 18th. You can go position by position and talk about the defensive contributions of each team. And there are certain players in which it's bringing that number up for the Dodgers pretty significantly. Thinking like a Tommy Edman so far, what he's able to do. Offensively is where this gets interesting, because you would expect for the lineup that the Dodgers have, which let's go back to the lineup. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Tommy Edman, who's having an emergent season, Michael Conforto, Will Smith, Max Muncy, and Andy Pages. You would expect them to be at the top, which this is not saying that they won't be, but thus far in the season, they have been a 5% above average offense across the league. You look at a lot of different metrics that they have. And you look at, let's just look at batting average. They are 20th. They're about middle of the pack. On base percentage, they are middle of the pack, which that is usually something the Dodgers excel at. Slugging percentage, which this is something, if you look at ISO, you look at the number of home runs, they are able to hit for power, which is keeping a lot of their offensive numbers up. When that dips, we're seeing this team really struggle to be able to sustain a lot of offense, because you look at a lot of other metrics. Walks, they are 8th, which is pretty solid, but you're normally talking about the Dodgers being top 5, which they are really close to being to that top 5 level, so I'm not too terribly concerned about that. Strikeouts, they're actually about middle of the pack type of so, but this is where it's really interesting, and you can take this in a couple of different ways, either positive or negative, and we'll get into some of this a little bit later. The Dodgers have the second worst batting average in balls in play, meaning every single time that you hit a ball in play, what is the batting average of that? League average typically is around 300. Just looking at where things are at right now, it's a little bit lower than 300 right now because of the weather environments. As the weather heats up, that typically will go up. The Dodgers, however, only have a 255 batting average in balls in play, which you can use either as they are getting unlucky, and so they will be able to turn it around. You can identify that with certain players. You can also look, and we'll dive into this in a little bit, the Dodgers, there's a lot of players that aren't really hitting the ball too terribly hard. And that is of concern for a lot of these hitters that we are seeing. And we'll dive into each one of the numbers right now. So just doing a little bit of an overview, and then we'll dive into each one of the individual players. The Dodgers have a low batting average of balls in play. They are doing a decent enough job with drawing walks. They're hitting for enough power. Yet when they are actually putting the ball in play, they don't seem to be doing too well with that, which is leading to, when you have a little bit of a famine of home runs, leading to a lot of times when the Dodgers are struggling to put together runs, to put together some of those rallies to score runs in different ways. We've seen times where the Dodgers have been able to do well at that. Other times when they have not necessarily done so well at that. So just some early season. Again, I will repeat this over and over again. We are April 21st when we are observing this. We're about 23 games into the season. These will change. These numbers will change. And because of the talent level that the Dodgers have, likely will change for the better. But something to keep in mind as we go forward. So let's go ahead and actually look at the actual numbers statistically for the Dodgers this season, because I think it is important to see where the numbers are actually putting a lot of these players, where they're getting some of the value, and where there could potentially be either concern or cause for optimism going forward. Based on what we've seen so far. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this over. Again, courtesy of numbers from Fangraphs, is look at the overall numbers that the Dodgers have from their hitters so far, sorted by WAR. So this is the Fangraphs WAR that's calculated. Baseball Reference, very similar WAR, just slightly different calculation. You'll get very similar numbers here, similar to WRC Plus and OPS Plus. I use those numbers quite a bit. Those are, you're going to get roughly the same calculations for both of those, with just slight variations based off the weights that are put into that formula. Leading the team, without a surprise so far, is who has been, especially offensively, the team MVP. That's Tommy Edman. He's put up 1.2 WAR this season. You talk about there are currently, 5 different players that are putting up positive WAR numbers for this team so far, according to Fangraphs. It is Tommy Edman, it's Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Will Smith, and Freddie Freeman. Everybody else to thus far, which is just 23 games into the season, he has put up either a 0 WAR or slightly negative WAR, which, remember, with WAR, it is cumulative throughout the year, so the more playing time that you get, the more you have the ability to either increase that score or have a higher negative score. So that is very important to keep in mind. So with Tommy Edman, the biggest thing about him has been the absolute surprise, I would say, because it was not anticipated by me, of his power output that he's been able to produce. His quality of contact has been absolutely unreal. A 284 ISO. He has 7 home runs, one of the most in the National League. I haven't looked at the updated numbers in the past couple of days, but it is certainly up there. You look at all of the different numbers, his expected numbers, which this is going to be something that I'm going to be looking at quite a bit. And we'll look at StatCast as well, is the actual numbers and then the expected numbers, and where there is a divide or where there is similarities to what we are seeing. With Tommy Edman, his actual WOBA, which WOBA, all that is weighted on base average. It's trying to take an on base percentage and attach different weights to it. So for example, a home run is better than a walk. Double or triple is better than a double. It's trying to attach different weights to those and put a weighted on base metric to it. And that's an important distinction. And then the expected WOBA just looks at based on the quality of contact that you have, what would we anticipate your weighted on base average to be? That's essentially what it is, which if you're looking early in the season, what you have a larger sample size of is batted ball quality, or the number of times you're putting it in play, as opposed to perhaps some of the results. Maybe they're about the same or so, But some of those swings and perhaps swing decisions, you can get a little bit more of a sample size of to this point in the career. You can see with Tommy Edman, 361 WOBA, 391 expected WOBA, which means his quality of contact has actually been even better than what he's been able to produce. He's been 32% above league average, which this is something to keep in mind with Tommy Edman as he continues to go forward. You would hope that this quality contact is able to maintain itself if he is going to have just a 3% walk percentage, because that is limiting his time to be able to get on base. It is currently below 300, which is below league average, but he's able to produce a lot with the slugging. I'm not anticipating this walk percentage to stay at 3% the entire season, but certainly something to keep in mind. He has been absolutely fascinating, does all the little things in the game right, plays incredibly well defensively at second base. He can play decent at center field as well. He's an absolute ball player. Tommy Edman, what can you say about him? And he's been the MVP thus far in 2025 on the offensive side and has opened up a lot of different elements for the Dodgers to do so many different things. We're going to come back to... let's go ahead and dive into Mookie Betts a little bit. Defensively at the shortstop position, grading out actually pretty solid, especially with outs above average. I believe last time I checked was actually above average at shortstop for Mookie Betts, which going into the season, if he was a league average shortstop, I think that would have been celebrated massively, at least from people like me who anticipated similar defense to what we saw in 2024. But thus far, at least the grading out-wise, been doing well defensively. Offensively is where it gets a little bit of a confused bag for Mookie Betts. Because we are seeing WRC plus 127, 243 batting average, which is low for him, but 356 on base, 432 slugging. He's walking more than he's striking out. Those numbers look really solid. He has 4 home runs on the season. What is interesting about Mookie Betts, and this is just something to keep in mind for him, is we are actually seeing his WOBA that he currently has, 353, and the quality of contact that has come off his bat thus far has been vastly different. Mookie Betts only has a 300 expected weighted on base average, which if you look at StatCast, which this is just looking at the StatCast page currently previewing the Dodgers versus Cubs series that will start tomorrow. Look at Mookie Betts and some of the numbers that we see right here. The exit velocities aren't necessarily there. He's not necessarily getting a whole lot of hard hits to this point of his career, or to this point of the season. To his career, he's a Hall of Fame player and he's gotten lots of hard contact. Expected batting average, expected slugging are not necessarily great for Mookie Betts. So, what is my level of concern for Mookie? Not at all. I'm not concerned. He's a Hall of Fame player. But that is something to keep an eye on for him because perhaps he, at least quality of contact-wise, been a little bit down so far this season. Still a lot of time, and I'm not concerned about Mookie Betts at all. But that is an interesting statistical outlier that we've seen that has been different from Mookie Betts' past career. Shohei Ohtani, he's still amazing, still putting up a 150 WRC plus. That can even be better. You can see his expected numbers way higher than his actual numbers, so I think he'll continue to go out there and shine. I'm not worried about him. Will Smith has had a really good start to the season, been getting on base at an incredible rate, a 443 on base percentage. He's hit for at least a decent enough power. Just 2 home runs, but you can look 160 ISO. That's decent enough for him right there. Will Smith, another great start to the season. Freddie Freeman, more limited sample size, just 46 plate appearances. He's still going out there and absolutely raking with a 176 on WRC plus. These guys that you have right here, those are 5 anchors that are in this lineup doing really well. The rest of the lineup is underperforming a little bit to this point in the career in the season so far. And let's take a just general overview look of where the offense is right now. Just looking at the roster right now, if we can get this to load just a second. So the rest of the lineup we have for here, a couple of different areas where they are either struggling in different components of their game. We'll actually go ahead and cut this back to me right now. A couple of different components in which guys are struggling right now. Right now, I would say the outfield is struggling to this point of the season. And this is just a general overview because there are different areas in which players are underperforming in certain areas and have certain skills that aren't necessarily there. Defensively, when we talked about going into the season, we talked a lot about how the defensive outlook for the outfield wasn't going to be ideal, particularly and the way that they constructed the entire defense wasn't going to be ideal, and that they were going to have to overperform and hit in order to be effective. The Dodgers decided to go ahead and re-sign Teoscar Hernandez. I think was a move that was widely celebrated by Dodgers fans, and rightfully so, based on his performance that he had in 2024 and what he meant to the city of Los Angeles. Everybody loves Teoscar Hernandez. Defensively, while he might be slightly better in right field than left field, he's not a great defensive player in right field, and we've seen that come up during times of the season. We've seen that reflected in some of the numbers that have been outputted. Michael Conforto, similar thing. Just recently signed free agent. He is a corner outfielder and defensively is a below average corner outfielder, which means he has to out-hit in order to overcome some of the defensive outputs that he has. Andy Pages, not a natural center fielder, although recently he's had a couple of good plays. You saw the home run robbery that he had during the game on Saturday. He's had a couple of other good plays, and actually defensively, whether this is the narrative that wants to be put out there or not, defensively has been a better hitter or better fielder than both Teoscar Hernandez and Michael Conforto. Offensively is a different story right now for Andy Pages, who is massively struggling. So when you look at some of the batting for a lot of these guys, and we'll go ahead and cut it back. Teoscar Hernandez, 109 WRC plus on the season, walking about 3.5%. Strikeouts are down for Teoscar Hernandez. He's putting the ball in play more. The WOBA and expected WOBA are relatively about the same. With him, we saw a really good start to the season. Started to slow down a little bit recently for Teoscar Hernandez. You would love to see for him just that power to be able to maintain for Teoscar Hernandez, because the Dodgers, in order to be an effective lineup, consistently effective lineup, having him to be able to produce offensively, especially as a big-time power right-handed hitter, which if you look up and down the lineup that the Dodgers have going back here, Mookie Betts can hit for power. Be looking at other players. Tommy Edman, I guess, is a switch hitter for power. Will Smith, the modest power, I would say. And then you look at Andy Pages, who hasn't been able to produce offensively for power. There might not be as much without Teoscar Hernandez right-handed power from the bat, although give Teoscar Hernandez credit, does have 5 home runs to start the season, but has been 9% better than league average to start the season, which with his defensive limitations right now has him at a 0 WAR. Let's look at Michael Conforto. We'll jump down to him right now. The thing with Michael Conforto, and I'm sure Casey and I will talk about this quite a bit, currently WRC plus of 103. The reason why is WRC plus is that despite him hitting only 194 is because he's walking 16% of the time, meaning he's getting on base at a 341 clip, which is significantly above league average. I think league average last time I checked was about 312 or so on base percentage. Slugging has gone down because Michael Conforto offensively has been struggling over the past couple of weeks. If you look at his numbers since April 6th, something like since the Philadelphia series. He's been down quite a bit for Michael Conforto, and which is causing some of his numbers to be struggling quite a bit, posting right now a negative 0.1 WAR, in part because of his defensive limitations, not really a threat on the base paths as well. Andy Pages had those 2 home runs, has had a couple of good catches. Here's the thing with Andy Pages, and I believe in the Dodgers' plan of giving him at least 150 plate appearances to try to figure things out. There's a couple of things right now. One, I think there have been improvements throughout the past couple of weeks in center field that we've seen from Andy Pages. And that doesn't mean that he's a perfect center fielder. I don't think he is and probably won't necessarily be. I think he fits much better in right field, which there's been limited action, but I think you've seen where some of that can come into play, especially with his arm in the corner outfield. The Dodgers just don't have room for him to be out there. It's been better defensively in center field so far for Andy. Right now, currently, offensively, has been a struggle. And this is where I'm most concerned with Andy. Has to do, and this is why I talked a lot about that distinction, the WOBA and expected WOBA for Andy. Currently, it's at 257, the WOBA, which is well below league average, and the expected WOBA is actually worse than that. And this is the thing with Andy. He's working deep into counts, which has been a good positive sign for Andy. The thing that has been a struggle is just when he's been able to make contact, which I know that they've been working on him, and you can see him starting to swing more early into counts to try to get better pitches to hit. He just hasn't been able to make good, consistent, quality contact to this point of the season. So, I still believe the Dodgers are going to give him an extended run, but having a 205 batting average in balls in play goes along in part with your quality of contact that you're able to produce, which so far has been a struggle for Andy. If he can get that up and he can start making good, consistent quality of contact, I think that's when you're going to start to see him turn things around. But until he's able to do that, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for him. Walks 9.5%, strikeouts are about 30%. This is a little bit high, although it has gone down a little bit over the past couple of weeks or so. Max Muncy is an interesting one because to this point in 79 plate appearances, 0 home runs to start the season. That is not what we are accustomed to for Max Muncy. Only hitting 191, 291. He's walking 11% of the time. Strikeouts are up a little bit at 35%. The thing with Max Muncy recently has been hitting the ball a lot better, which if you look at WOBA versus expected WOBA, his actual quality of contact, a lot better than what the actual results are producing for him. So I'm actually less concerned about Max Muncy right now because I think there are still some good signs. It is just taking a lot longer to get him rolling, get him going into the season. And once he starts hitting for power, that is when you're going to see this offense start to move a lot more. You're going to start to see the offense start to score a lot more runs. Max Muncy plays a crucial role, and he hasn't been able to reach that level. Been better recently, but that is where it's at. That is the starting players for the Dodgers offense. So then it goes to a question of what does the bench look like and what are the actual individual roles. To do this, to answer this discussion, which we'll go ahead and get into the chat in a little bit. I want to go through this in depth, in detail. I just want to do a little bit of an overview, and we'll let the screen load in just a sec, of an overview of how the roster is constructed. And then we'll actually start with the starting lineup, talk about level of concern, where do I think things could potentially turn around for each one of these guys. Top 3, I'm not really concerned about. They're Hall of Fame level players, even if the quality contact from Mookie Betts has been subpar this season. Tommy Edman, been awesome. I expect, based on the track record from what we've seen, more to come from players like Max Muncy and Teoscar Hernandez. Will Smith, I think he will remain solid for the first little bit of the season. We'll see if he's able to turn around the second half of this season, if the Dodgers are going to give him additional rest as the season goes along. Michael Conforto, I expect more offensively out of him, and for him to be a valuable player, part of this Dodgers team, he has to be able to produce more offensively. Andy Pages, I still have hope for him to continue to be able to produce offensively to what we've seen. What's actually interesting about Pages is he's not able to hit right now against left-handed pitching. Last year, that was his calling card, and there was a lot of people wanting to platoon Andy Pages specifically against left-handed pitching versus right-handed pitching, which, albeit, that's where his 2 home runs come from, and that's boosting up some of the numbers for Andy Pages this season. Currently a 102 WRC plus against righties. It's like a -7 or something against left-handed pitching. So we'll see what happens with that. The bench, and this is something that's really crucial for the team and something to keep in mind, is talking about the different roles of each one of these guys on the bench and how they plan in. Because if you're talking about the starting lineup for the Dodgers, these are each one guys that should be playing just about or every single day. Shohei Ohtani should be hitting every single day. Mookie Betts every day. Freddie Freeman every day. Teoscar Hernandez every day, Tommy Edman every day. Michael Conforto can make an argument that he should be getting 450 to 500 plate appearances, especially with how they signed him. Will Smith every day, as much as the catcher can go out there and hit. Max Muncy, you would anticipate him every day. Andy Pages, you would at least get a good chunk of plate appearances. So there's not necessarily a whole lot for the bench to be able to fill in, which we will get into some players, potential replacements for each one of these guys in just a little bit, some guys that have been performing down at the minor league level, and talk about them. With Austin Barnes, let's talk about his role. Currently, backup catcher to Will Smith, not really that complicated. And I think right now they still are continuing the development with a player like Dalton Rushing, and with the way that Austin Barnes is able to work with the pitching staff, as long as he still be able to produce positively pitching wise, as far as framing, as far as working with the pitchers, some of the things that aren't covered metrically, statistically, I think they're going to keep him around for at least a little bit. Where it gets interesting is each one of these other 3 guys. Kike Hernandez has been the primary guy that they've gone to and turned to when, for example, Freddie Freeman was out for a little bit. They turned to Kike Hernandez to step in and fill in as needed. He's played the most by far out of any one of these guys, and he's the youngest out of the bunch at 33, almost 34 years old, and has played a huge part in a lot of different Dodgers teams. Miguel Rojas is the primary backup defender on the infield. We'll get into some of his numbers in a second. Put up really solid numbers last year. And then Chris Taylor, currently Chris Taylor's role, late inning defensive replacement, is not really getting a whole lot of plate appearances. As we had mentioned, service time could very well be playing a role with that. Let's look at some of the numbers that they had. Austin Barnes, I'm not really too concerned. 19 plate appearances, only hitting 105, which those numbers could really change really quick if he has a game that is pretty good. But past couple of years, you're talking about 125 plate appearances for Austin Barnes. At some point, they will have to have a difficult conversation, but thus far, they have decided to keep him around because of the way that he's worked with staff. We'll wait and see, though. They've kept him around, and it was a big offseason for them if they decided to move off of either Austin Barnes or a player like Miguel Rojas, because each one of them had club options, and then the Dodgers decided to stick with what they have done in the past and bring back each one of these guys with their club options, both Austin Barnes and Miguel Rojas. And you can look back and say whether that was the correct decision or not, or whether these are temporary holds to continue with the development until there is a perhaps better role for guys that come up through the system. Because so far, Austin Barnes hasn't been playing well. What's surprising about Miguel Rojas is typically we've seen him as sure-handed defensively on the field, and he has graded out not necessarily elite, to say the least, defensively, which combined with his offensive struggles as he continues to get up there in age, he is 35, 36 years old at this point, has really struggled to start this season. Chris Taylor, only 12 plate appearances during the Dodgers' 23 games. He's just not seeing a whole lot of playing time. Is batting .250, 41 WRC plus during the time that he has played. But he's kind of just a fill-in type of role right now for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So there's a couple of things to keep of note with this for the Dodgers. One, they are getting some contributions from some of the guys, and I think the talent level is still superior to where they're going to get really solid contributions from some of their stars. I don't think that is of question for the Dodgers, and they are having at least a Tommy Edman be able to far exceed expectations. They also have players that are underperforming to either their track record or what the expected numbers are. So I think a lot of those numbers are going to come up for the Dodgers. Where it becomes a little bit of a question, especially, is with the bench or some of the fringe-ish players as far as what they're going to do with them. And this is actually something that is something to keep in mind with the Dodgers going forward. They have an offense that is one of the oldest in the league. You look at each one of the guys that are part of the roster and their age currently. Currently, Andy Pages is the only one that is under 30 that is in the lineup right now. You have Tommy Edman, who is 30. Shohei Ohtani is currently 30 right now. But you're talking Mookie Betts, 32. Freddie Freeman, 35. Teo, 32. Michael Conforto, 32. Will Smith, 30. Max Muncy, 34. Austin Barnes, 35. Miguel Rojas, 36. Kike, 33. Chris Taylor, 34. And as we've talked about repeatedly on the show, as players get over the peak of their careers, which is typically 27 to 31-ish, they start to dip in production. And the question that I had to start the season is, what are we going to see from some of these players? Are they going to start to dip pretty dramatically? Is it going to be gradual, or are they going to be pretty stagnant in their careers and in their development? And so far with some of the players, especially with some of the players on the bench, again, they've had a lot smaller of a sample size than other players have. It's been a little bit more stagnant or a little bit more dramatic in some of the decreases that we've seen to thus far in the season. So then it becomes a question, do the Dodgers have an opportunity to be able to add youth into this lineup and to be able to, one, replace some of the players that might be underperforming, especially if they are performing well at the minor league level? Could be a question to be able to have. And two, because the Dodgers at some point are going to have these players come up, and they're going to have to make their lineup a lot younger, because if you continue to rely on the same people over and over, eventually those players are not going to be the same players, and it's not for the better that they're going to be on the other side of 30. You're going to see decreased production, which means you're going to have to take risk, and you're going to have to suffer with some younger players going through some of the struggles. I think part of the reason why they continue to go through and give Andy Pages repeated plate appearances, despite a lot of frustration, and perhaps rightfully so, from Dodgers fans, is because younger players take a little bit of time to get acclimated to the big league level. But once they get acclimated, they can be productive players. We've seen this actually from previous players within the Dodgers organization, from a player like a Michael Busch. We've seen it from, despite him being injured right now, from a player like a Johnny DeLuca has had a pretty solid start of the season. And you've also actually, and this is actually something that's really exciting that I've been tweeting about quite a bit because I've gotten to know some of these guys. You've seen a lot of different players within the organization, or players that were formerly part of the organization, get the call up to the big leagues recently. I'm going to talk about three different examples. One, right-handed reliever, part of the Dodgers organization previously, notably from what I saw in 2023 with Great Lakes. A reliever by the name of Juan Murillo made his debut with the Arizona Diamondbacks and is taking by storm with a lot of his pitch mix, doing really awesome. With the Seattle Mariners right now, former Dodgers prospect, former hitting prospect, who the Dodgers turned into a pitching prospect, started to excel, Sarin Lau is going to be, or at least was added to the Seattle Mariners roster, has yet to make his debut, but is coming really soon for him. And then Yorbit Vivas, former Dodgers infielder, was just recently called up by the New York Yankees. Hopefully he'll get an opportunity to actually play in a major league game. Those players are coming up through the system. The Dodgers actually do a really good job with a lot of their development in bringing guys along. I know there's been a lot of frustration about the Dodgers hitting department, in particular with bringing guys up, but perhaps the issue is either not putting them in the right situation, because where the Dodgers are at, they are limited as far as the defensive positions for each one of these guys to be able to play, and often put them in a position that is not ideal for them, which is not a blame for the Dodgers because they have superstars at those positions. That's what they have to do, but that is an added thing to be able to think about if you are a young player coming up through the system. Or it's perhaps the Dodgers bar of excellence, which doesn't allow players to be able to continue to grow and develop in the system and reach the potential that they had. So that brings up in what environment should the Dodgers call up players to be able to replace guys, and how do you actually get these guys developed at the big league level? And two, are there guys that are ready to be able to make this the next step and to be able to take over roles for guys on this roster, and who are those potential guys? There's going to be two guys that are talked about quite a bit on the show, or talked about quite a bit across the Dodgers organization as guys that the Dodgers need to call up immediately. Let's go ahead and look at what their numbers are thus far and things to keep an eye out for each one of these guys. So for this, we're actually going to look at the Dodgers minor league system, and we're going to look at some of their AAA numbers, if this screen could load right here. Yeah, let's look at some of their AAA numbers right now. So this is AAA Oklahoma City, the Comets. Highly encourage you guys, watch a lot of these games. Don't just look at the numbers. Actually go ahead and watch the games, because that tells you a lot more than what these numbers, they'll just enhance what these numbers are actually saying. Hunter Fiducia, hitting incredibly well on the 40-man roster, unfortunately is blocked by Austin Barnes. Unless the Dodgers decide to move off of Austin Barnes, Hunter Fiducia is in a state of being completely blocked to this point, and it sucks for him. Let's look at the names that have been talked about pretty widely, and the first name that we're going to talk about right now is Alex Freeland. Free is hitting really well to start the season for Oklahoma City. And let's talk about some of the encouraging signs, but before we talk about things to keep an eye out for that could be wholly either worrisome or things that could potentially be holding him back a little bit. Currently, Oklahoma City is hitting .329 with a .412 on base percentage and a .494 slugging. That's a .906 OPS to start the season, a .134 weighted runs created plus. He's 34% above league average for Free this season. He's also doing a decent job drawing walks, 13%, that or 12.7% technically. That is not uncommon for Alex Freeland. He, especially last year, did a really good job of being able to draw walks. He is patient at the plate, going to draw a whole lot of pitches as he goes along. Defensively, Alex Freeland is a natural shortstop, which if you look at a lot of the defensive highlights over the past couple of weeks, he's made some incredible plays defensively at shortstop and is shorthanded there. He's been playing a little bit more third base as well. A lot of left side of the infield. Has played some second base. I actually don't recall if he's played any this year. I know he played a little bit there in 2024 and was fine during the games that I saw him at second base. Can move around defensively quite a bit for him, which is interesting about Alex Freeland. This is something to keep an eye out for because there's a couple of worrying signs, and then we'll get into one more encouraging sign for Free. Strikeouts, a little bit high, and if this is repeated with some of the swinging miss numbers, the swinging strike percentage for him. Currently, the strikeout percentage is at 26.5%. If it's at that level at AAA, that typically will go up as you make it to the big league level. It is still early in the season for Free, but there is still that concern with swing and miss in his game and with pitchers that are able to hit the strike zone more consistently at more difficult locations and with better sequencing. That is something to keep an eye on for Free. Also, he's hitting at a 450 clip on batting average and balls in play. That typically will go down as the season, which means that some of the offensive numbers might go down a little bit as the season progresses. But if you look at some of the numbers, which this is looking at his individual page on Fangraphs, you can look at a lot of these numbers. What I want to do, and we can go ahead and try to zoom in a little bit, is look at some of the numbers right here because you can see if it will actually load. Right here, some of the batted ball quality from what he had in 2024 to 2025, which this only takes into account the AAA level. You can look at his hard hit percentage during 61 batted balls versus 100 that he had last year. It's up pretty significantly, his hard hit percentage. Max exit velocity is up 3 miles per hour. He's got a higher exit velocity from there. A lot of good numbers as far as the data, just based on the quality contact that he's had thus far. You will see, however, if you look down at some of the numbers for swinging strike percentage, that is up a little bit more. The in-zone contact is down a little bit. So these are things not necessarily to say Alex Freeland is not ready to make it, but if you're not seeing Alex Freeland put up a 134 WRC plus and ask, why is he not called up? Especially when he can steal bases, especially when he can play defensively really solid. There's a couple of different things with this. One, it could be things that he's continuing to work on, or the Dodgers are looking him to be more consistent with certain pitches making contact on. Could be something that they're looking into. It could be something where, and this is something that I think is important to keep in mind, what is the actual role of Alex Freeland going to be when he makes it up to the big leagues, and how do you make him into a really solid player, and what does the future look like for Alex Freeland? Because there could be an argument, and I'm sure that people have made it in the comment section at some point, that Alex Freeland should take the spot of a player like a Miguel Rojas right now. Miguel Rojas is struggling. Miguel Rojas already at 10 years of service time. He is also not necessarily performing great defensively thus far in the season. I think he'll be better as the season goes along. And so then it becomes a question, okay, what is the actual role of Miguel Rojas? In part is insurance on the infield, especially at the shortstop position, of being able to cover for in case Mookie Betts either is unable to play the shortstop position at a level that is sustainable for the Dodgers, or in case they need some help with other defensive areas on the infield. Alex Freeland is able to do that. But do you want, when you call up Alex Freeland, which will be at some point, do you want him to sit on the bench 4 to 5 times out of the week? And how will that help him get to the level of player that he can be at some point? There has to be intentionality, and there has to be a role for him to be able to maintain, as well as there has to be a complete across the board. Yes, he checks just about all these boxes, and we feel comfortable not only to bring him up to the big leagues, but to add him to the 40-man roster and potentially remove somebody from the 40-man roster and have him fill in a hole at some point. You could have him replace Andy Pages, but who plays center field, and how much backup do you have in the outfield? Because I'm assuming the answer would be Tommy Edman. Okay, does Alex Freeland play second base? It becomes a little bit of a question. He has not played a ton at the second base position, albeit I think he'd be totally fine at the second base position if that is where the Dodgers had put him. So, encouraging signs for Free. He's done solid so far. There are still things that you want to keep an eye out for if you are the Dodgers, and perhaps role is a really crucial thing to keep in mind if you're talking about Alex Freeland going forward with him on the team. We're going to go look at one more player in particular because I know this is a name that has popped up quite a bit for the Dodgers, and rightfully so. We've seen and heard a lot from Ha-Seong Kim. Ha-Seong Kim, currently, if you're looking at some of the numbers right now, currently hitting 265, 322 on base percentage with a 518 slugging. That's 840 OPS. Currently has a 111 WRC plus, 11% above league average. What is noteworthy about Ha-Seong Kim is he's actually hitting for a lot more power than what I anticipated, what I think a lot of people anticipated. 253 ISO, one of the best ISOs on the team, currently second best on the team behind Michael Chavis. He's hitting pretty well. There are some signs, some things that you can go ahead and take a look at. One, he's able to steal bases at a decent clip, 1.1 weighted stolen base. That just looks at efficiency as well as quantity with stolen bases. Walks about 5.5%. That is a little bit low for Ha-Seong Kim. As far as what you would anticipate, if the player that you anticipated would be a little bit more contact oriented, although he to this point of the season is not been that type of player. Strikeouts are also for Ha-Seong Kim a little bit high at 27.2%. That is significantly higher than what it has been in his career. So if we want to look at some of the numbers where Ha-Seong Kim, which again, all these numbers are from the KBO, different game, different league, but you're talking about strikeout percentages of about 15-ish%. That has jumped up quite a bit once he has gone over to the AAA level, although his power numbers, you can look at the ISO, vastly different thus far because of his 4 home runs that he's hit. 6 stolen bases for him. I don't think he's been caught stealing once this year. Just looking at some of the other numbers because we want to look at quality of contact, what exactly is each one of what exactly is he able to do thus far in the season. Let's look at just some of the contact. Zone contact is actually pretty solid at 86.6%. We might do a little bit of show on that at some point. Swing and strike percentage, similar to what we saw with Alex Freeland, 12.7%. And I think that's because he's swinging outside of and not making contact as much outside of the zone, chasing some of the pitches, which could be because he's still getting acclimated to the game here in America and trying to get used to some of the pitching that there is. I don't see any data on the quality of contact, so we'll go ahead and cut over right here. So Ha-Seong Kim, it's interesting with him because I think right now you could potentially, it depends entirely on what the Dodgers' role and what they see as the future for each one of these guys. Because if it is we're going to have you come in, we're going to have you, if they want them to have more established roles, then you have to wait and make a determination of what to do with Andy Pages first. If it becomes we're fine with you sitting on the bench and perhaps that being kind of your role that you have, then you could potentially start talking about player like a Miguel Rojas, or eventually late in the season, potentially a player like a Chris Taylor with what they're able to produce later down the line. So interesting discussion with Ha-Seong Kim. Again, with both Kim and Freeland, right now I'm looking to see what exactly does the quality of contact maintained consistent with a player like Alex Freeland? Is he still able to hit enough line drives with that gap-to-gap power? With Ha-Seong Kim, is he able to make a little bit more consistent contact, maybe perhaps get on base a little bit more? And how sustainable is this power actually going to be for him? Interesting to watch for them as they're just getting started with their season as well. With the organization, with the Dodgers, I think they are still in a period, despite a lot of the panic that is right now because the Dodgers haven't been performing offensively, which if you go back to the start of the show, we looked at the overall numbers of where the Dodgers are at offensively, and they are about middle of the pack. It's been a middle of the pack offense. They face some good pitching, but that shouldn't be an excuse for the Dodgers as a team. I think they're in a lot better place right now. A lot better. I think they're in a lot of better place than what they have shown, and I think the offense is going to grow into being a lot better than what it is. But it requires contributions from some of the guys that have track records of being able to produce. In order for the team to reach its potential, players that have defensive limitations that currently aren't hitting right now have to be able to out-hit what they are producing defensively in order to offset that and make the lineup as good as it potentially could be. There are a lot of things that you could potentially change about the Dodgers, but requires a lot to be able to do that. If they wanted to move off of any of the players on their bench, they would have to designate those players for assignment and not see them as part of the organization. Which last year, if you remember, the Dodgers decided to do that with the player by Jason Hayward. Been not quite as long with the organization, but spent 2023 with the organization. They did that after about 200 plate appearances. A little bit more playing time for him, but it was a couple months before they made that decision. If you're talking about, especially with players on the bench that are clubhouse leaders, it is probably going to be difficult for them to make the decision to do that. They're not going to do it with a player like Max Muncy thus far. He's got too much of a track record. They signed free agent contracts to Teo and Conforto. Andy Pages, they've already stated they want to give him an extended period of time. And remember, if they do decide to option him down, he will likely lose that last option year, which means in 2025, he's got to be with the big, or 2026, I should say, he's got to be with the big league club for the entire season. Otherwise, they have to designate him for assignment or trade him. And becomes a question of, do they want to do that with some of the potential that they've seen with Andy Pages? I don't think we're going to get to any of the statistical observations from the pitching. I will say that most of it has been really, really good. Jack Dreyer's been amazing. A lot of the bullpen has been amazing. Really solid contribution from Yoshi, from Dustin May's been solid pitching-wise as well. I think the pitching staff has shown thus far to be really solid. Offensively becomes a little bit of a question. So then it becomes, what is your bar from being able to move off of different guys? They've already established it with Andy Pages. They're looking for 150 plate appearances. Do they decide to potentially look at things perhaps a little bit different after some of the series that they have coming up? They have Chicago coming up for 2. They'll be playing against Chicago. But then they're going to be playing against Pittsburgh and Miami. I'm trying to remember some of the other teams. I think Atlanta and Miami again. They're going to be going against some teams where they have an opportunity to be able to score and reestablish themselves offensively as a unit. It's going to be important for them to be able to do so because this team is a lot better than what they've showcased thus far. I still believe in the long-term outlook of the team offensively, and I think there's still a lot of players that are going to be able to produce for the Dodgers as an organization long-term. So I think I still am happy with the health of the organization as far as where they're at. It's just been some underperformance, but they are still winning, and they are still towards the top of the National League as far as their standings. So I still have zero concern about this being a playoff team. They also have some really cool performances that are coming up. Had a lot of time to be able to spend time in Great Lakes. If you saw the show on Saturday, I got to talk a little bit about Zaire Hope having a 2 home run game, including a home run off of this number 2 overall pick in the 2024 draft, Chase Burns. I think is probably going to be called up to Double-A really soon. He had a home run off of him, as did Kendall George, who is somehow hitting for power out there. It's great for them to be able to do that. We've seen great pitching performance from players like Brooks Auger, pitched really well. Peyton Martin pitched pretty well as well. One player that that I'm keeping my eye on a little bit, which I think this is a player. I think Casey has probably talked about him on the show, on the Down on the Farm segments. But from a statistical point of view, I'm starting to keep my eye on him a little bit. Is a player with the most strikeouts across minor league baseball right now. does not play for the Great Lakes Loons, but is a player to keep an eye out for. He plays currently at Rancho, which highly recommend go check out this guy and the players down in Rancho when you get a chance to be able to do. And I don't know if I'm going to be pronouncing his name right, but when AAA baseball, especially at this point in the season, when Single A has only had 2.5 series, and Double A has only had 2.5 series, AAA has had 3.5 series, you would anticipate a player from AAA leading the strikeout category. But this guy from Rancho Cucamonga is leading all the minor leagues in strikeouts. His name is Shang Lin Yong, Linan. And not only is he leading the minor league baseball in strikeouts, his swinging strike percentage is currently at 24.5%, meaning 24.5% of the pitches that he throws end up being swings and misses. And he's doing this with 15.5 innings, some of the most that are at the level that he is currently at. He is a player to at least keep an eye on for because he's performing really well. And if you remember, player by the name of Sarin Lau, talked a little bit earlier, made his major league debut. One of the things that distinguished himself and caused him to be able to go up the ranks, he was getting a ton of swing and miss. Led the Dodgers in swing and miss in 2023, I believe what it was, tied with Kyle Hurt for some of the most swing and miss. Sean Paul Lin Yong, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I apologize if I'm not. Keep an eye out for a player like him as part of this system as he continues to go up. Let's get through a couple of the comments that we have right now. Again, I apologize for not being able to go through any of the chat right now, but I appreciate you for going in here. Gregory, thank you very much for joining us. Craig Osterberg, Lucy Chen, do you think the Dodgers will DFA some of the players in their lineup? Rojas, Taylor, if things don't get better, and call up some of the young guys from the minor leagues? Potentially. I went into a little bit of that. I think it becomes what is the role that they're going to have? If it's going to be the Chris Taylor role where they never see the field, that's an entire waste of a player like an Alex Freeland and Hae-Sung Kim's development. Well, it might be better than a defensive replacement of Chris Taylor. I don't think it's going to be necessarily great for them, but if they want to incorporate them a little bit more, or perhaps if they want to have Alex Freeland take some of the third base reps from Max Muncy and go against left-handed pitching because Alex Freeland is a switch hitter, have him bat ready against for Max Muncy against left-handed pitching. Perhaps get some playing time at second base as well when Tommy Edman can go to center field and kind of split up platoon that way. Perhaps that's the case. I just don't see it at this point. Chris Taylor, I've talked about. I don't think he's getting designated for assignment for a long time. Miguel Rojas, I think, is more likely at this point, but I'm not ready to go there yet, depending on what the role is for them. Continue. Al Minerva, thank you very much for joining us as well. We'll get into... Al Minerva says that Tucker Fella would look fantastic in Dodger blue. He has a chance to be a free agent next year. He says Tucker in right field, Teo in left field, and Hope at center field would be at my outfield in 26. Be patient with Zaire Hope. As we've talked a lot about in this show with Alex Freeland, with Hae-Sung Kim, there are slight concerns with some of the swing and miss that you just want him to be able to work out as he goes along through the system. Zaire Hope has also been playing more corner outfield than center field. Been fine defensively at the corner outfield and fine enough in center field, but I think more naturally fits into the corner outfield role. But it would be amazing for him to continue to rise up the ranks as he continues to have. Let's see. Lucy Chen, Betts has no power on his hit, either ground ball or fly out. Do you think he's already in the regression stage? That is something to keep an eye out for. I wouldn't put it completely on Mookie Betts, although you see it with the expected numbers. He hasn't been the batted ball results have been fairly lucky for him at this point of the season, if you believe in that WOBA versus expected WOBA type of stuff. Quality of contact hasn't necessarily been great for Mookie Betts, but I would not say that he's in the regression part of his career. If this continues for 3 or 4 months, then there can start to be having some of those conversations of, is there concern with Mookie Betts, and at how much of a concern is there? Because you would anticipate him being one of the better hitters on the team and continuing to produce a lot offensively. Thus far, he's been able to produce, but will that continue with some of the expected numbers? I want to see some of the batted ball come up a little bit for him. We'll get to just a couple more comments we'll get to a couple more comments on here. Let's see. Some grades right now from Gregory. Edmund, A+, Betts, B+, Smith, A, Freeman, A, Otani, A+. Yeah, maybe we'll do that on one of these other shows. Necron 99, Pages has been making improvements and putting up some quality at bats. Something to continue to watch for Andy Pages as he continues to develop. The more of these guys get playing time, especially as they're younger players, the more that they will continue to try to grow and put up better plate appearances. If they're not getting consistent plate appearances or consistent playing time, very difficult to be able for them to make these adjustments, which it is difficult to be able to see. But for Andy Pages, you want to see him have better output on the field as far as the quality of contact, even if it's not necessarily getting results on the field. We'll see. We'll just get to a couple of these guys. Lucy Chen, Dodgers need to develop young players. Can't have the young players stuck in the minor leagues and keeping these unproductive players that are aging as well. They have to be able to find roles and prioritize roles for the young players if that is the case. If you want to get some of the younger players, you have to be able to give them productive times and to be able to do that. Gregory replaced Max Muncy with Dalton Rushing today. Dalton Rushing, I don't remember the last time he's played third base. That would be a defensive change for him. You would have to fill third base with somebody, and then it becomes how does Dalton Rushing fill in defensively, and where does he actually play? Either Will Smith or Dalton Rushing would have to play third base, and neither one of them have been playing third base a lot. That is the interesting part with Dalton Rushing, is the defensive position as far as how they're going to fit him into the mix defensively. Will they go ahead and find a spot for him to get playing time, or is he going to take the Austin Barnes role? Which, if he's only getting 125 plate appearances a year, that's an entire waste of Dalton Rushing, and he will never reach the potential of what he has. So we'll wait and see what they are able to do for him. Let's see. Al Minerva wants Muncy, Taylor, Barnes, Rojas, Pages replaced by Rushing, Kim, Fiducia, Freeland, and Hope. Again, I will say this again, Zaire Hope down at the high A level, still got a lot of time before he's going to make it up to the big leagues. It takes a long time for these guys to be able to get ready before they're ready. Same with Boy Smith. We need to sign, Bregman next year. I believe Bregman is locked up with Boston, although I don't know if there's a opt-out with his contract. If not Murakami, there's not a good third baseman in free agency until 2027. You could develop an Alex Freeland. I also am anticipating, and this could be because I'm anticipating Max Muncy to continue to hit. I think it's almost a guarantee that Max Muncy will be back in 2026, in part because, similar to Chris Taylor, next year will be the year that Max Muncy reaches 10 years of service time. And I also think that he has been a very productive hitter to this point of his career, to the point where even if he has a more limited role, I think he'll still have a role on this team based on what the Dodgers have shown them be able to do. Al Minerva, Herb Rushing gets traded if he's not called up. It's ridiculous. JRM, any chances we see Rushing and or Freeland get called up this season? I think it's probably likely, depending on opportunity. I think for both of them, they'll be deserving to be called up to the big leagues, and I think they'll be ready. But it becomes there's not really a whole lot of room for the Dodgers to be able to maneuver. If you have a veteran-loaded club, which the Dodgers have a veteran-loaded club, that comes with a past track record. which is a positive for the Dodgers because you kind of know what you're going to get. But that also comes with very limited flexibility. One of the things that the Dodgers like to do is they like to have flexibility. So one of the reasons why they have a bunch of different utility type players, because it allows them to do a lot of different things around the field, move guys around and fill in different holes, different roles. Roster construction, if you get veteran players, you either have to have them on the big league roster, they have to be on the injured list, or you got to release them. Designate them for assignment being the technical term. And you have to come to a point where you're paying guys a lot of money, and designating them for assignment becomes a difficult decision to be able to do. And currently, the Dodgers only have one player that can be optioned up and down, and that's Andy Pages. So they have room for one additional player. And right now, that player is the everyday center fielder for the Dodgers. Neither Alex Freeland nor Dalton Rushing play center field, making it a lot more difficult. But after this season, the Dodgers will have to add Alex Freeland and Dalton Rushing to the 40-man roster in order to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, because if they do not, they will be taken immediately, and some other organization will have them for basically nothing. Couple $100,000 or $50,000 or something like that is all the Dodgers would get for them. Love to see those guys get opportunities, just like we're seeing some of the other guys get opportunities for other organizations. And I think that the reason why I decided to showcase and talk about Juan Murillo, Sorin Lau, Norbert Vivas, one, I'm excited for those guys, and I want to celebrate them, but it shows that the Dodgers have talent within this organization, and if given proper opportunity, I think they could succeed. So then it becomes, how do you incorporate these guys onto the roster? And at what point do you draw the line to make difficult decisions? And I think it's going to take a little bit for the Dodgers to be able to do that. And I think it's going to be especially telling if the Dodgers lineup struggles during some of the upcoming series. Not necessarily the series against Chicago, which they have seen quite a bit, but just looking at their schedule, which I will pull up right here, talking about their series, they'll be home against Pittsburgh for 3, home against Miami for 3, then at Atlanta, at Miami, before they go to Arizona. That'll be a good, decent series. Then the Athletics, the Angels, and Arizona. Not necessarily with each one of those, although Arizona's been solid pitching-wise. Been a lot of teams that have been a little bit more struggling, in which you would expect the Dodgers lineup to get rolling. So if there is continued struggle from there, then we can start having conversations first in-house. What could be the option? And then as we get closer to June and July, then we can start talking about external options, but that will come a little bit later. JRM, odds of the Dodgers making a move for Robert Jr. It is possible that they go ahead and do that. He's not necessarily been my favorite player, although he's a little bit of a different player than what I had pictured him. He's drawing a little bit more walks, still striking out a decent amount. Right now isn't producing the best, and very injury prone for Luis Robert. So it's how much do you buy into the star potential of him? It's a good match between the Dodgers and the White Sox, and especially if they seem to want a James Outman. I actually hope the Dodgers trade James Outman to the White Sox, not because I want James Outman out of here, but because I actually want him to get a shot, and I don't see that necessarily happening for the Dodgers anytime soon. And so if he's able to get an opportunity with the White Sox, I hope it happens. Whether they'll go ahead and get Luis Robert, that could come at the expense of the up-down. So let's say that you trade for Luis Robert, and then you option Andy Pages down. Now you have nobody to move up and down. That means there's no spots for Hae-Sung Kim or Alex Freeland or Andy Pages to work their way back, unless you designate for assignment other players on this roster. So I think it's a wait-and-see type of approach. Wait for the White Sox to get desperate to move off of him, especially if Luis Robert continues to struggle throughout the season. So we will see. Not necessarily been my ideal choice. I will, although there isn't a whole lot of center fielders out there that I think would be ideal candidates. But we'll get into trades at a later date. My voice is starting to give out a little bit on me. Throat's starting to get a little bit dry. I've been going at this for an hour and 20 minutes or so. A couple of things I want to take note. One, There was a show actually recorded earlier in the day. Casey and Coach Holt recorded a show that was put out on 10 o'clock on the West Coast time. Be sure to go check that out. That goes into a deep dive into the last game that the Dodgers had, as well as more conversations about the Dodgers offense. This was much more of a, let's look at some of the numbers and make some sort of statistical approach. So highly recommend you go ahead and check that out. Also has a really good down on the farm segment that Casey is able to dive into as well. So highly recommend you go ahead and check that out, as well as continue to follow us here, Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. I believe we should be having a show Wednesday night. Casey and I typically have a show Wednesday night. We'll be back at it. I don't have any Loons games that I'll be going to this week. They are traveling out to Lake County, which is just east of Cleveland, Ohio. That's a bit of a drive for me. Not going to be making the trip this time. Might make it last week of the season. We'll see what happens with there. It's been an absolute privilege to be able to do this again, go on the show, and continue to go dive into the Dodgers and just the season so far. We're just a small step into the season, but we're starting to get some sort of observations to what the Dodgers are stating based on their results, and you can start to draw some conclusions from that. So it's important to take these steps along the way, not obsessing over these numbers completely, because this is not the full picture, but just observing these numbers and then taking note as far as, okay, let's keep an eye out for this and move on from there and try to make the best, most appropriate decisions, not rash decisions, but the most appropriate, wise decisions to help your organization go and win as many games as possible, because that's ultimately the goal. Dodgers are still doing a good job at winning games. That's what you love to see. Let's hope the Dodgers are able to continue to be successful as they travel to Chicago, play games Tuesday and Wednesday, off day on Thursday, then pick it up back home against Pittsburgh on Friday. It's been a privilege to be able to go dive in, talk some more Dodgers baseball. Hope to do this a little bit more often over the next couple of weeks on Monday nights, as I won't be as much on the road during this stretch of the Loons schedule. But as they continue to go along, might be a little bit more sparse as we get into, especially June and July. I'll be on the road a ton. Super excited about that. Been a privilege to be able to join with you guys. Continue to tune in. Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. We will be back with more shows coming up. I believe Wednesday will be the next show, either in the morning. There might be a morning show, maybe a live show as well. Keep an eye out. Turn the notifications on. All that sort of stuff. Appreciate all of you guys. Until next time, though, thank you for tuning in. Go Dodgers.